For the lining or trim on the outside of all the armor pieces, I ended up using 3mm foam. I used the templates that I used to create the actual pieces, and then just designed a thin trim to go around the outside. I originally was going to use just a mirror finish silver vinyl, similar to the vinyl that I used for the inside of the pieces, but I didn't want such a shiny finish on every single piece and every square inch of the costume, and also this made it easier to blend into the edges and make everything look like one solid piece. And then when I painted the edges on the outside and around the back, I wouldn't have to match a color. I could just use the color that I wanted and make it a little bit more of a dark silver, a dark chrome, rather than being such a mirror finish chrome. I did this for every single piece that I have on the costume. I only recorded this one because ultimately it was the same process over and over again, and doing it was mind-numbing, so I can't imagine watching it all. But once I got it, I glued just the edge so that essentially you could still slide the vinyl underneath. And then I took a Dremel and just Dremeled the edges flush so it looked like one solid piece. And then I also cut and did a very deep round on the backside, and then just rounded it slightly on the front. To prime the foam for paint, I ended up going with Flex Bond. It's made for Warbler, and you can use it on foam. You can just put it on with a brush and use a little bit of water, or you can put it on straight depending on how thick you want it to be. In most cases, I would thin it down a fair amount. The thinner you seems to get it, seems like it self-levels better, but if you thin it out a lot, you're going to have to do a lot more layers. So certain things like these winged pieces here that go on the knee, I wasn't overly worried about them being completely solidly smooth, since they're just kind of an accent piece. And this is kind of an extreme version of the amount I was using here. This one, I put it on pretty thick on these. But other pieces that were more that you would see more, I did several light layers where there was a lot more water involved. If you do it that way, you just have to let it dry a lot longer and do several more layers. You can also tint this stuff, but most of the stuff that I was putting it on was already the black I needed, and I was going to paint over it anyway, so I just left it white. For the painting, after I had primed the foam with the Flex Bond, I then started with a Vallejo gloss black surface primer. This is one of my favorites to just gloss something, to do a black undercoat. And then all of the chrome is this All Clad 2 chrome. It's one of the best silver or chromes that I've ever seen or used. You can get a very dark chrome if you put a dark black base underneath, and then you can get a very high reflective chrome if you base the bottom layer something a little bit brighter. And then I sealed all of that with a Vallejo varnish, a gloss varnish. And I know on chrome and gloss finishes you don't necessarily want to put a varnish over top of it, but to protect it with just how much it was going to be handled and how much it was going to wear and tear just from wearing it, I tested one piece without using the varnish, and just after a day I could tell I was already wiping off the paint. So I ended up doing I used the Vallejo varnish on every piece that I painted on this costume, and it works really well. I tried several different varnishes and gloss coverings you can use, and this one was by far the best I had. And then right here, this is the gold mirror finish vinyl that I used on the entire costume, and I basically just slid it underneath all of the silver linings that I had created on the entire costume. Since I only glued the inside edge, that left it kind of like a flap that I could lift up and put all of the gold underneath. Just after I used the same templates that I used to create it out of foam. But then as I was putting it in, I just slowly worked it in, and if it needed to be trimmed, I would trim it down just so it could fit properly. But all of the pieces that needed to be, like all the silver trim pieces, they had to be painted first, just because I didn't want to go back and have to use masking tape and mask off everything and then worry about paint running through it. So I painted everything. I did all of the silver painting just first right out the gate, and then once it was all set and dry and had been varnished and was safe to handle, I went back and just started putting all of this through. And it was just using the template, cutting it down, and then I get it to where there was going to be some excess, and I would mark it and cut and try and get it as close as possible, just so you wouldn't see the seam as much as I could. This was like this, and between doing the lining and doing these were painstaking steps. I mean, you didn't get very far in several hours. It was a slow process. When I was finished with these, or when I got them to where I liked them, I would just cut and then glue down the edges wherever I had just had it end. And then once I had it exactly how I liked it, I would go back and then use some super glue and then glue down all of the silver trim onto the actual gold vinyl, just so everything was secure enough to where it would not fall out. I tested it without using any glue on the trim, and the gold would stay in unless it got a little too crazy, and then it would start to kind of fall out. But also the way these trims are set, when I would walk around with this costume on, it would rub on each other, and I was worried that they would kind of grab and then start to pull each other off. I was originally, like, you've probably seen in my test photos that I've done before, like especially that first one when I did the full first test. I didn't have any of these trim lines on. I didn't have any of that because I wasn't planning on doing it. I was going to just do it with some other vinyl, and so I figured I would just cut it out and slap it on. But then after looking at it and realizing, after I got my hands on this gold vinyl and realizing what it would take to do that with a silver lining over top, I just worried about the process being much too difficult. So I went this direction. I'm glad I did, because this worked out really well. And it gave me a lot more control about edges and the color of the paint, and I think it made it a lot simpler, but even still, it was still quite difficult. Everything that I painted gold was pretty much the same exact process. I did the Flex Bond, and then I would do the black Vallejo primer, and then after that is when I would do this Createx pearlized gold, which is a very nice color, I think. It matched very closely with the gold that was the mirror finish. At least it blended very nicely. And then I would put the silver over top of that and then just do the varnish. And these are what the feet are one of the main things I painted completely. But this is what they looked like after. For the fabric, I know there's many pictures out there, and a lot of them, well, some of them show he has a solid gold trim, and a lot of them show he has no trim. But I was worried that the gold trim, if I did it with all the other gold in the costume, would just kind of get lost. So I had a lot of help with the fabric and a very nice sewing machine, and we found this design that it would do that we really liked, and so we went with this. And then for the hood and for the belt, we just used frog closures. And for the chest lights, originally I showed in one of my previous videos I was using just a nail, and I had bent it through and was kind of just hanging the chest lights on that. But I went back and actually inserted Chicago screws, and so I would push it through the hole and then screw it onto the back, and then I used a small piece of wire to hold the front fabric where we had put some eyelets. So you ran the string through the eyelets, put it over the Chicago screw, pushed that through, screwed it together, and then I also used Velcro to hold the lights so they wouldn't wiggle back and forth. And I did the same thing from the shoulders. The shoulders were all nails just kind of holding them in, but I went back and did Chicago screws. So I would push them through, and there was a piece of Warbler and a washer, and then I would just screw it together, and that way they're very secure, and I don't have to worry about them trying to come undone, but they also still allow it to move freely. And then right here in the back, you can see the back drape is actually held on right there with just some Velcro. That one was actually a very easy connection. And then this is the inside of the front. These are where the abdomens hold on. Those are just Velcro and strapping. These are these were some of the easiest things to configure. I mean, they use Velcro and strapping, but because of the way that's pushed against my chest, there's no easy way for them to come undone. One of I think the bottom layer of these abdomens has a snap. It also snaps onto the side. You can see the bottom one right there, or the top one right there, that's one of the abdomens snapped on. And then the other one is what's actually holding the side together, where I have my opening on the side. It's a snap, there's magnets, and then on the outside right here, you can see that's Velcro underneath the foam and underneath the vinyl. And then in the front right here, you can see the hole and the Velcro for the front chest, but then you can also see the strange cutouts I had to do to get the gold vinyl to lay down on the front of the chest. I was able to do this, and I knew I was going to be able to do this because of the drape in the front. You wouldn't be able to see it. And then right here is the belt that holds the hips, and then that bag right in the middle is what I use to hold my battery packs for my lights on my wings. But it's all just vinyl held onto, or it's all just strapping held onto a belt. And here you can see the hips on the outside after they have been kind of, vinyl put in. Here's the forearm. For this, the top layer is the gold mirror vinyl. The silver is all just the chrome. And then I did a solid gold on the bottom layer. And then the side layer is kind of just dusting to give it a slightly different look. And then this is the knee piece and then the knee wing from the back. I just painted. Here's one of the wings. I did two different colors on these wings. It's all tulle, the fabric tulle. I think it was like 15 yards per wing. Draped it over, laid it, glued it, and then I used this paint, the metallic candy blue, and one other, but I threw the other one away before I got a picture. It was a really light, like baby blue. And then this right here is, I was testing my costume the day before the actual convention, and I ended up breaking my harness, and so I had to rush through the night and hurry and slam this back together using tons of glues, using Warbla, and using aluminum and some nuts and bolts just to be able to slam it all back together to get it to hold. And it's still holding. I'll have to redo it eventually, but as for now, it's working. And then this last little bit is just a time lapse that I did on stream to put it all together. When I started right here, you can see I start with these yoga pants that have the chain mail, and then there's actually an undershirt that goes on right here. But I chose not to put it on just with how much of a pain in the ass it'd be to put on the mannequin. So I just went straight to the fake chainmail shirt that I wear. This is just a quick run through pretty much how most of this stuff goes on. I skipped some of the steps just because it's not going on a mannequin and not on me, but this is pretty much how you would put it all together. The belt that holds the hip armor also holds up the thighs and the battery pack, and then I use suspenders to kind of hold that all together with the pants. And one thing I know for sure after building this entire thing is I did it from the beginning, but if you're ever going to start building something like this, make sure you save your templates from the very beginning. I mean, even if you take a template and then you alter it once it's in foam, you will probably need, well, you might need that template again. And I have like three or four Ziploc bags full of templates from this costume, and a lot of them I didn't have to reuse again, but a lot of them, every piece that got relined, I just reused the same template that I used. And if I had thrown those away, it would have been a whole nother disaster to try and actually get those linings figured out. Even though I didn't know exactly how to build it all out of foam, one thing I always knew is I wanted redundancy, and that's why I might have mentioned it before, but most pieces, I think aside from a couple here and there, are held on in more than just one way, or if they are held on in one way, it's a solid connection. I just always went for redundancy. I didn't want to have to be worried about something falling off or something just not holding on. So a lot of things, I just went for the strongest bond I could, but also a bond that I could move or remove. Like the shoulders are Chicago screws. They're tightened extremely tight, but if I needed to, I could completely pull them apart. So I just always went for redundancy and strength in bond. I think there's only a couple of things that are just Velcro, and those couple of things that are Velcro, they're in a position where the Velcro should not fail. Most of it's inside the chest armor, like the drape in the back and the chest or the abdomen armor. They're basically held against my body, so I don't see any way that they're going to come off. But everything else was just, I tried to find a strong bond. And then, this was all a learning process with how to make those connections, and a lot of them is just altering. Like the wings, the first time I did it, it was a very small hole, and I was using a certain type of pin. But then when you actually go to put those on when they're on me, it was very difficult because they're holding all the weight of the PVC and the lights and the tool. So I had to alter the way that those connect. And so it was just a lot of, I think the way I first attached the shoulders, I think I went through 3 different versions of those. At first it was just Velcro, and then I moved to snaps, and then I used, I think, nails, and then I went to Chicago screws.
For the wires, come off the wings, have the LEDs. The wire comes down from here, we slide it just inside this gap right here, and then I cut a hole in this shirt and glued the edges so it won't tear, but we feed them through a hole just inside here, and then the wires actually feed down. I don't know if that's on camera. Oh yeah, it is. I put battery packs in there. The battery packs are like this. This is USB. And we slide just 2 of them reach all the way down from the actual wings themselves. 2 of them we use these USB extenders. And I believe this zip-tied knot is what they did right here to hide it, because these ran up through to here, connected with the lights. These were zip-tied right in here, and then plugged in to the battery packs in here, which are underneath several things to try and hide them. So, and turning on and off the lights, I can actually reach them myself. I just have to kind of reach behind and find them. They have to search a little, but the wires essentially just come through. They go through like this, and then from here underneath to here, and then the wings with the lights, the LEDs, connect from there on. Pretty simple. The battery packs were included with the lights. And the USB extensions are 6-footers, even though all I needed was about maybe 1 or 2 feet. They just don't sell anything that small. Everything, I tried to secure everything more than once. So the wings slot in, they also buckle. Pieces that I used to hide them, I showed already. They have Velcro and a loop, and that loop goes over top of the PVC. And then once you put the wings in, even if that Velcro fails, it could fall or it could go up. But it's, you're not going to walk away and lose it. The biceps are held on by a buckle on the inside. The belt that is holding these up and the thighs. I don't know if I'm zoomed in. The thighs and the hips are held onto a belt, and I use suspenders. Connect the suspenders, and then they go up and just hold those up better. Just so I don't. And I also use it on the pants, just so I don't have to worry about anything falling down. The shoulders and the chest lights I've shown already. Those are all held together with Chicago screws and Velcro. They have a little bit of play, but not a ton. I could do more if I wanted to, but this is about where they hit my arms, so there's no point in them going any further. The two different golds you can see, especially on the wings and right here. This is gold vinyl mirror finish, and this is paint. There's two different versions or types of gold on this costume, and two different silvers. But once you see it all together, they kind of blend. It also just gives some depth and contrast. I mean, the only thing I have left to do on this is the sword, which, well, plus some fine tunings. There's still some things on there I need to fix, but you can't tell looking at it.
The one thing I've learned through this project is I went into this. This is my first ever foam build costume. I've done a lot of creating, and I've done costumes where it's a lot of painting or a lot of just altering clothing or painting clothing and doing things like that. But this is the first time I've ever done a real foam build. And I went into it not knowing how I was going to do any of it. And if I can get mine to turn out like this, I mean, no artist is ever going to be completely satisfied. I wish I could go back and change, many things about this one, but I think it turned out actually really well. I'm actually impressed with how well I was able to get it to come out. And so if you're thinking that it's impossible to do, or you have no idea, or you just don't even want to attempt it because you're too afraid, trust me, just try it. I started with the sword, and once I started getting the sword busted out, because I've done swords before, I realized, I should just start on the costume even though I have no idea, and so I just went after it, and it was definitely hard. I had I had at least I had at least 2 or 3 like mental breakdowns, just problems I couldn't see my way around, and fits of rage where I had to punch a pillow or take a break here and there. But I mean, if you just get into it and start figuring it out, I mean, this whole process was just a work in progress. I had no idea how to go about it, and just one step at a time. And then the one thing that always got in my way too is I was sitting there trying to make every single piece perfect, and when it wasn't perfect, I would keep trying and trying again to get it even closer and closer, until you realize that if you take that piece and put it with the body of work, it all comes together. I mean, there's a million little flaws, but no one's going to stare at that one little mess up indentation or that one little overcut on a shoulder or something like that. So I mean, if you can just put your mind to it, anybody can do this. That's a lot of people say there's no way, but I think anybody, if you put the time into it, you'd be able to do something like this. And then aside from the mental breakdowns where you break down, there's also the costume failing. There was several times. The first time I ever went to do a real test, my chest piece, when we went to do the closure, the whole thing ripped. And so I had to just take it all off and cancel the whole test run and go down and spend, I think, another half of a day trying to just fix the piece that broke. And then, that brace, that broke literally at 9 p.m. the day before the convention, and we were going to the convention at 10 a.m. And at that point in time, I had been through pretty much everything. The costume was pretty much nearly done. And I mean, what it could throw at me, I didn't have a breakdown at all. I was just once you get into the certain point of it, you just kind of see it coming. You just figure it's going to happen. Something's going to happen. And so when it broke, I just went downstairs and got together all the tools I could and just tried to build it up as fast as I could. And I actually got the repair done in probably only about 2 hours, and then did another test that night. And then I was just freaking praying the entire time we were at the con that the weight of the wings wasn't going to snap that, and it's still holding. I'll probably have to remake it eventually, but I went into this like really trying to make sure that I could get everything done by the convention time. I didn't want to be, like you see on all those other cosplay stories where it's like, yeah, I was down to the wire. I was building this until the night before, and I was praying that I could get this done, at least 3 weeks ahead of schedule and give me time to just test wear it, troubleshoot, figure things out. But it was, not only did that back plate break, the harness break the night before, but I think I painted the wings, the tool I put on there, it was a white tool. I think I painted those 2 days before, and I just had to go in and just do a really rough and dirty paint job. I was going to do with my airbrush and get in there and try and do a lot more neater paint job, but I just had to get in there and slam those 2 colors in and try and fade it as best as I could. And, when it's in the light of the day, I'm not overly impressed with how the wings look. But with the lights, they're amazing. And you never know, too, like at the con, people said my wings were amazing and they loved them. And in my head, that was one of the main faults that I had in mind. Just build it and deal with the faults on your own, and then let people judge it and enjoy it. Because, people really liked the costume, and I was overall extremely proud and happy with it. And so yeah, anybody, like if you're out there thinking it's impossible to do, you can definitely do it. It was a super fun build. I don't know that I ever want to have to make wings again, or I don't know that I ever want to have to do a trim or silver lining with foam ever again. That process was extremely slow and tedious, and just a long process. But like I said, I had no idea how to do any of this when I was going into it. This was all a learning process. But it was just putting my mind to it and just pushing on even when I was struggling. This last little clip is just us having fun on Halloween. I got dressed in the garage, and then once it got dark, we just opened it up and had some loud music playing. And then I was just kind of walking around, hanging out with all the people that were trick-or-treating. I can't use the actual music that we had playing when I walked out, just for copyright purposes. But this was just having fun on Halloween with the trick-or-treaters and with the costume. The clicker didn't work.
I know. Now. It should be now.
I had to run to the back wall and click the one on the wall. I was like, oh my god! And then I want to give a big shout out and thanks to anybody that helped me out in this build. There's a lot of people that helped with ideas and just many different things and actually building it. I also want to give a big thanks to anybody who's checked out these videos, watched them, watched the series, or maybe just 1 or 2 of them. It's kind of fun to record all these and actually get it up, because a lot of people have seen some of the stuff I've made in the past and wanted to see how I've done it. So anybody who's checked these out, big thanks. And then if you do want to catch me on stream, I've had my Twitch tag in the corner of all the videos. I think I don't stream a ton, but I would like to be able to get back to doing it more and more. So if you want to check me out, just give me a follow. And hopefully I'll be able to get on there and do some more stream builds, and maybe I'll see you in there. So thanks. Bye.